looking at some altocumulus castellanus out there, and we're talking about middle clouds with kind of a turreted vertical appearance like you see here. And that's indicative of a heightened lapse rate. In other words, the decrease in temperature with height is a little bit higher. Here's a corresponding Skew-T for our area, and you can see that layer of clouds right there. That's centered on about 770 millibars. If we consider that that's about 10,000 feet and that's about 5,000, that puts this layer right at about 8,000 feet. And you can see that, yeah, there is a heightened lapse rate. And what we're talking about is the slope of that red line. The highest lapse rate that we're going to see is parallel to this dry adiabat. And that's something we only see during severe weather events. Sometimes it will parallel the moist adiabat. That's not plotted on here, but it's roughly going to be equivalent to that. And you can see that the slope is a little bit higher than that wet adiabat. But you can see that the CAPE is basically zero, and that's due to the vast amounts of dry air in the low levels. Let's take a look at the hemispheric weather pattern, and we're looking at the 300 millibar level up near the top of the troposphere. And what we see here is the polar vortex mostly centered on Siberia. There's kind of a weaker one there around Baffin Island, and a lot of vortices due to the breakup of some of this flow here. Now, what we're going to see as we go into February is a shift in the polar vortex into northern Canada. So if we run this forward, there's the 28th, the 29th, and 30th, and you'll see that Siberian vortex dissipate. And that's right around the time that we have this ridging across Alaska start to build. You can really see that vortex taking shape right there. That's this entire region, and that's going to become dominant for the month of February. Now, another significant aspect, if we take this back to the beginning, we see a large number of waves all around the hemisphere, and really not a whole lot of blocking. If I count off the long waves, I'm seeing probably 5 of them there. So this is going to be a progressive pattern, and if we run this forward, you can see that we really don't have much blocking going on. There's a few attempts at blocking, like I mentioned up there in Alaska, but it basically cuts off that cutoff high, and the pattern just keeps progressing. Now, since the pattern is progressing, what that means is if we run this back one more time, we're seeing a long wave trough in the western U.S., and that's the reason a lot of these waves are shearing off and deepening into these cutoff lows. We've already had, I think, about 3 of those. And what we're going to see over the next couple of weeks is that pattern start shifting to the east. If we go all the way up into February, you can kind of see some evidence of ridging out west, and it looks like a lot of the troughing, not the small waves, but the larger, kind of like we're talking about the composites of all the waves, it kind of shows a little bit of troughing across the central and eastern U.S. And you can see that a little bit better as we head into the second week of February. Looks like a lot of troughiness through here, a lot of ridging out west, and this whole pattern is just kind of shifting eastward. And what that means is that the northwesterly flow is going to be advancing towards the west into the central U.S. So at some point, I think maybe around the first or probably the second week of February, we're going to see maybe a shift to colder conditions, especially with that polar vortex being up there in Canada. So I think eventually we will dislodge some cold polar air and maybe have some below normal temperatures across much of the country. And perhaps that's what the GFS is alluding to there around the 11th or 12th. That's pretty far out for the models, but I think, just based off the progression of the long waves, the way we're resisting these blocking patterns, I think that probably will set this up somewhere around mid-month. But anyway, that's a ways off. And of course, what we'll be dealing with is the smaller scale waves, and you can see that there's just kind of a whole train of them, just one after the other. These are all troughs in between the ridges, and they just kind of steamroll across the U.S., one after the other, one after the other. So we're going to have a lot of changeable weather for the next couple weeks, and that'll give us a lot to focus on here on Forecast Lab. Okay, so what do we have for today? Well, once again, we've got some active weather. The most notable system is out in the southwestern U.S. That's these occluded lows and this Bear Clinic low. That's kind of off the map. The data is really not picking it up, but it's definitely down there. And all of this has been responsible for a winter storm in Arizona and the Four Corners region. Some record-setting snowfall all the way down towards Bisbee, Douglas, up towards the Mogollon Rim. And Arizona really doesn't see systems like that very often. That is advancing eastward towards Texas, but there's not much moisture, and you can see those dew points in the 20s and 30s. So any weather that happens is going to be mostly in the mid-levels. Then we have this other weather system there in the Ohio, Pennsylvania area, and some very notable cold air damming in the Carolinas and Virginia. And what we mean by that is we're talking about like a dam, like if you picture the Appalachians holding back cold air, that's what's happening. The cold air has been trying to flow up toward that low pressure region, but it can't get anywhere. And that allows some of that warm air to sneak up on the west side of the Appalachians, and as a result we see temperatures in the 50s out around Charleston, South Carolina, or Charleston, West Virginia, and Jackson, Kentucky. Meanwhile, on the other side of the Appalachians, it's down in the 40s with IFR conditions and poor weather. And if you go a little bit further south, very warm conditions with 70s in Georgia, and that's going to be out ahead of this cold front coming in from Memphis, Little Rock, and Shreveport. And that cold air mass is represented by this big high. That's going to be a 1034 millibar high across Canada. Let's get a look at that. There it is. There's that big high pressure area along the border between Saskatchewan and Manitoba, and some very cold temperatures in there. We saw minus 30s Fahrenheit. We're not talking about wind chill. I don't talk about wind chill. I think that's kind of confusing, and it's a little bit deceptive as far as how cold air masses are. I like to deal with the actual temperatures. And those were minus 30s in Saskatchewan yesterday, and we covered that on the supporter stream yesterday. Yesterday we also had the behind the scenes thing for our supporters. So I hope y'all enjoyed that. Anyway, that cold air is on the move southward, and we can see minus 9 in Winnipeg and temperatures below zero all the way down to International Falls and down to Minot, North Dakota. So some parts of the U.S. definitely getting some bitter weather. But most of that's going to be heading for the Great Lakes, and it should be modifying over the next day or so. On the backside, pretty mild, 20s into Wyoming. And then we pick up the single digits there in Alberta. Let's go a little bit further north. And it's not that cold. This looks like a very typical weather map for northern Canada. And usually what I'm looking for is very strong high pressure, 1040, 1050 millibars. I'm looking for temperatures below minus 20, down to minus 30, minus 40. Not seeing that at all. Just this residual Arctic air, and that's going to gradually modify, and I'm not sure if we have any more on the way. Yeah, there's some more high pressure up there in Alaska. See right up here. And temperatures below minus 20 in some areas. So that'll bear watching. We'll watch for that on the model forecasts. Here's a look at our weather system there in the southwestern U.S. Well, what do we see here? A lot of wind, a lot of upper level wind. These clouds definitely have a sheared appearance. And we also see instability. These have a cumuliform appearance all the way from Clovis, New Mexico, all the way back towards Phoenix. So that means that there's a lot of cold air aloft. Most of the snow showers are going to be back in here, where we have the juxtaposition of the cold air and the instability. And then there's rapid clearing on the back side as the drier air works in. So yeah, there is some snow still coming down, and if I look through these gaps in the clouds, I can kind of see some of that snow on the ground. But it looks like around Tucson, back towards Deming, Lordsburg, I can see through those gaps. It looks like not much snow in the valleys, and I can't really make out the ridge lines. But there's the snowfall analysis from the Weather Service, and let's get a look at this. There's the scale. This is indicating that some amounts have been up above a foot on the Mogollon Rim out towards the Prescott area. And it looks like there's probably been even some snows in the valleys. In the higher elevations, even in South Arizona, looks like maybe some 4-inch amounts and some spotty 6-inch amounts. This is Bisbee, Arizona, about 90 miles southeast of Tucson. This is taken by one of our relatives. And that looks to me like maybe 3 to 4 inches of snow. I can see that yucca right there just covered with some of that white stuff. And that snow has come down even in Nevada. It looks like Area 51 there. Probably got about 4 to 6 inches. Up to Tonopah about 1 inch, and down to Vegas just outside the northwest edges of the city. Looks like some snow on the ground in that region also. So quite an unusual event, and like I said yesterday on the webcast, some very unusual cold air advection working in through here. We saw 40 to 50 knots up at 850. And I can't really remember a system offhand that's been this far south and this powerful in the southwestern U.S. It's probably happened, but I just don't really recall. And here's what we're left with on the water vapor imagery. Kind of looks like a big blob centered on Colorado. It doesn't have that comma look that's characteristic of baroclinic systems that are well developed. So I think what we're seeing here is mostly just a mid and upper level low pressure area. That's the occlusion kind of dying off, and looks like everything south of there has been decoupled from the tropical air. And it's probably due to the wraparound on the south side. And there's northern Mexico, and that's where the main baroclinic system is, kind of like through here. Why do I think that? We can see it on the model initialization. That's a very clear cold front right there, very clear warm front, and that's right around the Chihuahua, Mexico area. And just not seeing that, there could be some shallow, low-level moisture that the water vapor channel isn't detecting very well, but most of this is dominated by just very fast westerly flow. We can see those gravity waves very clearly. Probably pretty bumpy if you're flying through that area. So we can also check that out by dropping a Skew-T there around Chihuahua. And dry conditions. So even though we have the front there, even though we have a cyclone in that region, that's a low right there, it looks like, it's just kind of a dry system, and we don't have the benefit of latent heat and some of those other important processes that we get within developing frontal systems. So if we run that forward, let's see what happens to that system. Looks like it advances into Del Rio, towards San Antonio, but it is a dry system. And then by tomorrow morning, there it is pushing into Louisiana. Looks like one little weak low back behind it, but just overall just kind of a cold northerly flow sweeping into Texas. And here's our other story, a powerful weather system moving onto the west coast. To really analyze this, we need to zoom this out a little bit. And we can use the satellite imagery to kind of resolve the structure. This is the water vapor channel. Let me bring that up to the current time. Now, one of the features that you notice here is a very extensive stratiform region that's going to be located right in here. Typically that's associated with the strong warm air advection, and that often tends to be north of the warm front. So already I'm thinking maybe a warm front kind of running like that. And then the tail end of that comma tends to correlate with the cold front. Then the rest of it, leading into the cold core, is going to be an occluded front. The jet will often be running in the backside through that subsident region, and often it will round the top, kind of like that right there. So already we have a basic idea what to look for on the surface and the model charts. So let's put that together. Looking at the west coast, there's a region of warm air advection, bringing that warm air northeastward, and then the main frontal system itself, there it is off towards the west. And with that, looks like some showery, possibly stormy weather. So based on that, I would draw the fronts somewhat like that, very similar to what we had there on the satellite. So what that tells us is the triple point is located off the coast of Eureka. And as the overall thickness lines are running like that, that's probably going to carry the triple point down into Central California. So if we run that forward, yeah, there it is. This is about midnight tonight. Cold front advancing on San Francisco. Looks like the warm front is pushing towards the San Joaquin Valley area, and then the occlusion back up towards the north, maybe a little further up that way. And you can see the very high precip rates around San Francisco all the way up into Northern California. And with that, we have a winter storm warning. And this covers not only the Sierra Nevada, but also the mountainous region up in Northern California. And you can see mountains, 2 to 5 feet of snow, possibly up to 7 feet, and then 6 to 12 inches in the foothills. Northern Sacramento Valley, 3 to 10 inches, locally over a foot. So this is another possibly record-breaking storm. Yeah, let's take a closer look at this. Man, this is a far cry from September when we were looking for anything to cover. Things were so quiet back then. I did get a couple messages from Christopher R.J. Kane. He said, so much exciting information to triage into priority. California and Oregon expecting 8 to 12 inches of rain or 10 feet of snow. Ron Chalfant got 24 inches there in Crestline at 4,600. That's in the Los Angeles area. 18 inches of snow the last couple of days. A couple of thunderstorms across the region. Big Bear, 7,000 feet. 24 inches of snow. So what are the exact impacts? Let's take a look. This is Northern California. There's Sacramento. And this is skyvector.com, by the way. It's one good way to see the METARs and TAFs along with the terrain. So look at that, Mather Field. I don't know if you can see that TAF there. At 4Z, which is about 8 p.m. local, winds out of the southeast at 30, gusting to 45 knots with rain. And they've even got it peaking at 50 knots around 9Z, which is going to be about 1 in the morning, with heavy rain coming down. Wow. Sacramento, Metro, similar. They've got gusts to 46. And let me just see where the snow line is going to be hit. Yeah, look up here. Red Bluff, elevation 350. This is not up in the mountains. They've got gusts to 40 with a mix of rain and snow. Go a little further north to Redding. Elevation 500 feet. Quarter mile in heavy snow. Whew. Yeah, I would not want to be driving I-5 tonight because they are going to get nailed big time. Take a quick look at the coast there, Crescent City. It's all showers, highest gust 30 knots, and then down around Eureka, 36 knots with rain. And let's check out San Francisco. Well, before we go that far south, Sonoma County. Yep, it's all rain, gust to 40. Napa County, 32 with rain. And one other place I wanted to check was Beale Air Force Base. I guess they don't have it plotted on here. But we can go to Aviation Weather Center to pick that up. Wonder why they don't have that on there. Anyway, yeah, this is from the military forecasters there. 50 knots out of the southeast and all rain showers there. So yeah, the snow line is going to be up in the northern parts of the valley. And I know for those of you in the northeast U.S., this is probably a little bit boring, but for California, this is really a major weather system, and I want to make sure we get that covered. But anyway, at this hour, this afternoon, low 40s, it is pretty cool, and we can see that the dew points are running about 28 to 31, so there is going to be some wet bulbing tonight as those dynamics move in. And I did want to check out San Francisco real quick. Gust to 54 knots, that's going to be up near 60 miles an hour, and it's all rain. And then just really quickly, the impacts down the valley towards Fresno, gust up to 23, and then Bakersfield, 32 knots. Okay, so that's the story in California. And you can see a lot of warnings out for California, right around Sacramento. High wind warning. And there's the high wind warning, 35 to 45 miles an hour sustained, gusts to 60, and damaging winds, widespread power outages are expected. And here you can see the progression on the WRF ARW. If you want to just follow along the date and time, there's the valid date time, 18Z. That's going to be around 11 a.m. And that's the system coming in. And you can see the snow up there in the northern mountains, not quite all the way down to Sacramento and San Francisco, but heavy rain, heavy showers coming in through there and moving down into the Los Angeles area. Well, not quite there. Looks like it kind of stalls out tomorrow. And let's look at the wind field. I can see that front right there. I'm not sure where the warm front is. I'm guessing it's somewhere like that. But along that warm front, a lot of sustained 30 to 35 mile an hour winds. Looks like the strongest around 7Z. So that's going to be close to midnight tonight, local. And eventually it starts dying off as the pressure gradient relaxes. And I think that's the residual cold front down there. I'm not quite sure where things end up as far as the air masses by tomorrow, but looks like even tomorrow there's still kind of a southerly flow in place. And one other place getting hammered, Shemya. Remember back on New Year's they had that record-setting 925 millibar storm? Well, it's not quite that deep, but we're still dealing with a 930 storm, which is also very rare. And you can see the GFS bottoming that out at about 938 millibars as it's just south of Shemya. And then you can see it start to fill in since it is well behind the baroclinic zone. What does it look like at Shemya right now? Well, we can head right over to aviationweathercenter.gov. PASY. Yeah, and the weather is deteriorating. Gusts up to 60 knots, which is going to be about 70 miles an hour at this hour. Snow coming down, and the pressure is already down to 28.23. Not reporting sea level pressure, so we don't know exactly what that is in millibars, but it is dropping very rapidly. And you can see pressure falling rapidly, pressure falling rapidly, pressure falling rapidly. And let's take a look at that TAF down there at the bottom. Yeah, it looks like right now is about as bad as it gets. Gust to 60, and then the winds come around to the southwest as that low moves off. And they're expecting the pressure to bottom out at 28.27. So if I had to guess what that is, 28.27 times 33.8636, that gives us a pressure of 957 millibars. So I think that low is going either just to the west or to the east. Okay, are we ever going to finish? Boy, it's been one thing after another. We haven't even covered the northeastern U.S. system, but it looks like just some snow there around Albany, Schenectady, Rochester, all the way over to Boston. And I can see by the pressure distribution, the thickness lines, that'll probably be just shifting to the east during the evening. So let's look at the forecast for this evening into tomorrow. Things improving in the northeast U.S. That low in West Texas hopscotching over to the east, and just a few showers around Dallas overnight. A few showers out there in East Texas. And then, of course, the West Coast system making its big move through Sacramento, bringing torrential conditions to San Francisco, Oakland, and Stockton. Looks like the main surface low continues hanging off the Oregon coast, and the main baroclinic system not really developing all that much, just kind of shifting down the valley. Then let's see, for tomorrow, yeah, not much development on the California low, but it is still remaining potent, and you can see this continued snow shower activity there in the Sierra Nevadas. So looks like a very prolonged event. 24 to 36 hours of snow in that region there. And meanwhile, the rain moving down the coast towards LA. Out east, it looks like this one system leaves the east coast. So some residual snow there in eastern North Carolina. In the central U.S., ridging. So that's going to be bringing down some cold air towards the Gulf. And let's see, Thursday, Friday, that California system just moves eastward, gradually makes it to the Mojave Desert. So it's a very slow movement over multiple days. And like I said, that's just going to prolong the precip there in California. And you can see behind it the troughing as some of that cold air works south. Warm air advection pattern in the central U.S., so warming up there in Texas all the way up towards the Dakotas. And it looks like finally on Friday, going into Saturday, the system crossing Arizona, not quite as strong as the last one, but it does look like we start to pick up some frontogenesis there. Emerging into Texas. This is going to be early Saturday. Few weak showers there around western Oklahoma, and some strong cold air advection filtering back in behind. Then going into the weekend, there's our cold front and then the warm front lifting north. Kind of stormy there from Tulsa up to St. Louis. And everything moving into the Midwest for Sunday, Saturday night into Sunday. Cold air advection coming in behind, and then just kind of quiet through the first half of the week. California getting another system there towards Tuesday, and I think that's probably where I should stop. Yeah, this one little possible weak nor'easter around Monday or Tuesday, but we'll look at that on Friday. Okay, and I think that is about all I've got. I need to get this rendered and uploaded, so let me do that. I do want to thank our new supporters, Zachary Bennett, Bruce Broberg, Sam Luthi, and Fred Raymer. Thank you very much for your support. That does mean a lot, and that kind of support will keep me investing time and effort into this webcast. And my goal is, if we get the support high enough, maybe far down the road, we might be able to do this 6 days a week, maybe even 7 days a week. We'll see how it goes. Anyway, that's about all I got for tonight. Hope you all have a great Tuesday. And I'll leave you with this footage from the air. And have a great evening. See you tomorrow. Bye-bye.